There are moments in life when everything feels heavier than it should. You wake up already tired. Your mind begins racing before your feet even touch the floor. You think about everything that has gone wrong, everything that might go wrong, and everything you feel you should have done differently. And somewhere in the middle of all that thinking, you begin to wonder, how much longer can I keep doing this? When life feels this difficult, your first instinct may be to fight it. You want the pain to disappear. You want the circumstances to change immediately. You want your mind to stop thinking, your heart to stop hurting, and your life to finally become easier. But sometimes the struggle becomes even greater because you are fighting against what you are already feeling. You may be angry with yourself for being exhausted. You may feel guilty because you are not as strong as you think you should be. You may tell yourself that you shouldn't be afraid, shouldn't be sad, shouldn't feel lost. And now you are carrying two burdens instead of one, the original pain and your resistance to experiencing it. So, for a moment, stop fighting. Not because you are giving up on life, but because you are giving yourself permission to breathe. Allow yourself to acknowledge what is here. If you are tired, say quietly, I am tired. If you are afraid, allow yourself to recognize, I am afraid. If you are disappointed, simply notice, there is disappointment within me. You don't have to immediately fix it. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to turn it into a lesson before you are ready. Just notice. This simple act of noticing can create a space between you and the experience. And in that space, something profound begins to happen. You realize that you are not the emotion itself. You are the one who is aware of the emotion. Fear can move through you, but you are not fear. Sadness can visit you, but you are not sadness. Anger can rise within you, but you are not anger. Even exhaustion can become part of your experience without becoming your identity. Think about the sky. Sometimes it is clear and bright, sometimes it is covered with dark clouds. Sometimes there is a violent storm, and sometimes there is complete stillness. But the sky does not become the storm. The clouds move through the sky. In the same way, emotions and thoughts move through your awareness. Some may stay for minutes, others may remain for days or even longer, but they are still changing experiences. The mind often says, this is who I am, but a more peaceful awareness says, this is what I am experiencing right now. That one change in language can transform your relationship with pain. Instead of saying, I am broken, you can say, I am experiencing pain. Instead of, my life is hopeless, you can say, my mind is experiencing hopelessness right now. Instead of, I cannot handle this, you can say, this moment feels very difficult and I am learning how to be present with it. You are not denying reality. You are simply refusing to let one moment define the entirety of your existence. Take a slow breath, feel the breath entering your body, and then feel it leaving. For these few seconds, you don't need to solve your future. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to know how the next month will unfold. You only need to be here, this moment, this breath, this awareness. There is tremendous power in allowing yourself to be exactly where you are without demanding that you become someone else immediately. Perhaps you have spent years believing that strength means never feeling weak. But real strength is not the absence of difficult emotions. Real strength is the willingness to remain present with yourself even when difficult emotions arise. You can be scared and still take one step. You can be exhausted and still rest. You can be uncertain and still continue. You can be hurting and still remain open to the possibility that life can change. You don't have to become fearless before moving forward. You don't have to become perfectly healed before allowing yourself to live. And you don't have to pretend that everything is okay when it isn't. Give yourself the same compassion you would give someone you deeply love. If someone you cared about came to you and said, I don't know how much longer I can carry all of this, you probably wouldn't tell them to simply get over it. You would sit beside them. You would listen. You would remind them that they don't have to solve everything tonight. You would tell them to breathe. You would tell them that one difficult season does not determine their entire life. So why not offer that same kindness to yourself? Perhaps this is what you need most right now. Not another demand, not another criticism, not another attempt to force yourself into being stronger. Perhaps you simply need to stop running from yourself. Sit quietly. Feel what you feel. Watch the thoughts come and go. Let the emotions rise and fall. And remind yourself that you are the awareness in which all of these experiences are happening. You are still here. And as long as you are here, this moment is not the end of your story. You don't have to fight this moment. Simply breathe, witness, and allow it to pass. And once you begin to stop fighting the moment, something else becomes possible. You begin to see that what you are experiencing right now is not the whole of your life. It may feel like it is. When pain becomes intense, the mind has a way of shrinking your entire world down to the present difficulty. It takes one painful chapter and quietly turns it into a prediction about the future. You lose something and the mind says, nothing will ever be the same. Someone walks away and the mind says, I will always be alone. You fail at something and the mind says, I am a failure. You feel exhausted today and the mind whispers, I will always feel this way. Notice what is happening. The mind is taking a temporary experience and turning it into a permanent identity. But life does not work that way. Everything changes. Your thoughts change. Your emotions change. Relationships change. Circumstances change. Even the person you believe yourself to be changes as you move through life. Think about how many moments you once believed you would never survive. There were days you thought would break you, yet somehow you reached the other side. You may not have come through those experiences unchanged, but you came through them. And that is important to remember when life feels unbearably heavy. You have survived every difficult day that has brought you to this moment. You don't need to know how everything will unfold. You only need to stop asking yourself to carry the entire future at once. Sometimes the question, how am I going to get through the rest of my life, is simply too large for the human mind. So make the question smaller. Ask yourself, what do I need for this moment? Maybe you need to breathe. Maybe you need to rest. Maybe you need to step outside and feel the sunlight. Maybe you need to talk to someone you trust. Maybe you need to stop making decisions while you are emotionally overwhelmed. Maybe you simply need to get through the next hour. There is wisdom in taking life one moment at a time. When you are climbing a mountain, you don't reach the summit by staring at the entire distance and becoming overwhelmed by how far you still have to go. You look at the next step, then another, then another. Life can be approached in exactly the same way. You don't have to solve your entire existence today. You only have to take the next honest step. This is where presence becomes a form of freedom. The past may be filled with things you wish had happened differently. The future may contain things you are afraid might happen. But neither the past nor the future is asking you to live there right now. Right now, you are here, and there is something incredibly powerful about returning to this moment. Feel your feet, notice your breath, listen to the sounds around you. Let yourself become aware of the simple fact that you are alive in this particular moment. You may still have problems. You may still have unanswered questions. Nothing outside of you may have changed yet. And still something inside you can soften because you are no longer trying to live tomorrow today. So much anxiety comes from living in imagined futures. The mind creates 10 possible disasters and then asks you to emotionally experience all 10 of them before they have even happened. But you don't have to attend every argument your mind creates. You don't have to suffer through every future that fear invents. Bring yourself back. Ask, is this actually happening right now? Sometimes you will discover that the thing causing the greatest suffering is not the present moment, but your prediction about what the present moment means. And once you see that, you can breathe again. Maybe life is not asking you to have all the answers. Maybe life is asking you to become present enough to hear the next answer when it arrives. There will be seasons when you feel certain and seasons when you feel lost. There will be beginnings and endings. There will be days when everything seems to move effortlessly, and days when even getting out of bed feels like an accomplishment. Do not judge your entire life based on one difficult season. Winter does not mean spring has disappeared. A dark night does not mean the sun has ceased to exist. A closed door does not mean there are no other doors. Sometimes the transformation begins precisely when you stop demanding that life look different and start asking what this moment is teaching you about yourself. Perhaps this difficult period is teaching you patience. Perhaps it is teaching you boundaries. Perhaps it is showing you what no longer belongs in your life. Perhaps it is revealing a strength you never knew you possessed. Or perhaps it is simply asking you to slow down and care for yourself. You don't have to force meaning onto your pain, but you can remain open to the possibility that something new can emerge from it. And remember this, your present circumstances are information, not a final verdict. What is happening today does not have the authority to decide what is possible tomorrow. You may not be where you want to be, but you are not necessarily where you will remain. There is still movement in life. There is still possibility. There is still another breath, and sometimes another breath is enough to begin again. So, if life feels overwhelming, don't demand at yourself to figure out the entire path. Come back to this moment. Take care of this moment. Then take the next step, and let tomorrow arrive when it becomes today. This chapter is not your whole story. Keep turning the page. And when you begin to understand that this difficult moment is not your entire life, you can take another important step toward freedom. You can begin to let go of the need to control everything. This is one of the deepest sources of human suffering. We want certainty. We want to know what will happen next. We want the people we love to behave exactly as we expect. We want our plans to work. We want our efforts to produce the results we imagined. We want the future to be predictable so that we can finally relax. But life does not make that agreement with us. Life is constantly moving. People change. Circumstances change. Opportunities appear and disappear. Plans succeed and fail. Relationships evolve. Your own desires change as you grow. And when you try to hold everything still, you create tension inside yourself. Think about holding a handful of sand. If you hold it gently, the sand rests in your palm. But if you squeeze your hand tightly, because you are afraid of losing it, the sand begins slipping through your fingers. Sometimes control works the same way. The more desperately you try to control something, the more anxious you become about losing it. You begin checking. You begin overthinking. You begin imagining every possible outcome. You replay conversations. You wonder what someone meant. You ask yourself what you could have done differently. You try to predict what will happen tomorrow, and slowly, your attention moves away from the only place where you actually have power, the present moment. Ask yourself honestly, what am I trying to control right now? Perhaps you are trying to control another person's opinion of you. Perhaps you are trying to control whether someone stays in your life. Perhaps you are trying to control the outcome of a decision. Perhaps you are trying to control the future because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable. Now ask another question. Is this actually mine to control? This question can create an extraordinary shift. You cannot control another person's thoughts. You cannot control another person's choices. You cannot control everything that happens around you. You cannot control whether every plan unfolds exactly as you imagined. But you can control where you place your attention. You can choose your response. You can choose whether you will continue feeding a fearful thought. You can choose whether you will speak from anger or pause before responding. You can choose whether you will keep carrying yesterday's pain into today's experience. You can choose to rest. You can choose to begin again. This does not mean becoming passive. Letting go of control does not mean letting go of responsibility. It means learning the difference between what you can influence and what you must allow. If there is something you can change, change it. If there is a conversation you need to have it. If there is a step you need to take it. If there is a mistake you need to correct it. But once you have done what is yours to do, release the demand that the universe must give you exactly the result you wanted. That is where peace begins. Because sometimes you can do everything right and still not receive the outcome you expected. And if your peace depends entirely on getting the result you want, then your peace is always in someone else's hands. Imagine planting a seed. You can choose the soil, you can water it, you can protect it, you can give it sunlight. But you cannot stand beside the seed and command it to grow faster. Growth has its own rhythm. Life has its own timing. You may be in a season where nothing seems to be happening, but beneath the surface, something may be changing that you cannot yet see. This is why patience is not weakness. Patience is trust without immediate evidence, and trust does not mean believing that everything will happen exactly as you want. Trust means knowing that you can meet whatever happens with awareness. That is a much deeper kind of security. When you stop demanding certainty from life, uncertainty becomes less frightening. You begin to say, I don't know what will happen, but I know I can meet this moment. That is enough. You don't need guarantees. You need presence. You need the willingness to remain connected to yourself when circumstances become unpredictable. Notice how much energy is consumed by trying to predict the future. You imagine a conversation that has not happened. You worry about a problem that has not arrived. You rehearse a rejection that has not occurred. You create an entire emotional experience around something that exists only as a possibility. And while your mind is busy living in those imaginary futures, the real moment is passing quietly in front of you. Come back. Feel your breath. Look around you. What is actually happening right now? Not what might happen. Not what happened yesterday. What is happening now? Perhaps you are sitting quietly. Perhaps you are listening to these words. Perhaps you are breathing. And perhaps for this moment, you are okay. Let that be enough. You don't have to solve every problem tonight. You don't have to know exactly where your life is going. You don't have to make everyone understand you. You don't have to force every door to open. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is loosen your grip. Let people be who they are. Let circumstances unfold. Let the future remain partly unknown, and give yourself permission to respond rather than react. There is a beautiful paradox here. The moment you stop trying to control everything, you often become more capable of handling whatever comes, because your energy is no longer being wasted on resistance. You become flexible, you become present. You become available to possibilities you could not see while you were obsessed with one particular outcome. Maybe the life you are trying so hard to control is not the life that is trying to emerge. Maybe there is another path. Maybe there is another possibility. Maybe something you are calling a setback is quietly redirecting you. You don't have to know. You only have to remain open. So release what is not yours to carry. Do what you can. Give what you can. Learn what you can, and then breathe. Let life move. Let yourself move with it. Because peace does not come from controlling everything around you. Peace comes from trusting yourself to meet whatever comes. Release your grip, return to the present, and let life unfold. And when you begin to release what you cannot control, something inside you becomes lighter. You stop spending every ounce of your energy fighting reality, and you create space for something much more important, the possibility of moving forward. Because there are moments when life becomes so difficult that you begin to believe the only option is to quit. Not necessarily because you truly want your life to end, but because you desperately want the pain to end. You want the pressure to stop. You want the uncertainty to stop. You want the disappointment, exhaustion, loneliness, and endless thinking to stop. And when you have been carrying something for a very long time, your mind can confuse the desire for relief with the desire to give up. But sometimes you don't need to abandon your life. You need to change the way you are carrying it. You may need to rest. You may need to ask for help. You may need to walk away from what is draining you. You may need to release an expectation that no longer serves you. You may need to admit that the way you have been trying to survive is no longer working. There is no shame in that. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to begin again. Sometimes we imagine that moving forward means pushing harder. But there are moments when moving forward actually means becoming gentler with yourself. You don't have to run. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to become a completely different person overnight. You simply have to take the next honest step. Perhaps that step is getting out of bed. Perhaps it is making one important phone call. Perhaps it is apologizing. Perhaps it is setting a boundary. Perhaps it is forgiving yourself for something you have carried for years. Perhaps it is simply saying, I will give myself another day before I make any permanent decision about my future. One day can change everything. One conversation can change everything. One moment of clarity can change everything. Life is full of possibilities that you cannot see while standing inside the darkness of one particular moment. Think about how different your life is from what you imagined 5 or 10 years ago. There are people you once thought would always be there who are no longer part of your daily life. There are things you once desperately wanted that no longer matter to you. There are challenges you once thought you could never overcome that have become distant memories. You have already changed many times, and you will change again. So don't assume that the person you are today is the person you will always be. You are still becoming. There are parts of you that have not yet awakened. There are strengths you have not yet discovered. There are experiences you have not yet lived. There are people you have not yet met. There are mornings you have not yet seen. There are moments of unexpected joy that cannot be predicted from where you are standing today. This is why you must be careful about making permanent conclusions during temporary storms. A storm can make the sky look completely closed, but the sky is not gone. It is simply covered. And your awareness is like that sky. Thoughts may become dark. Emotions may become intense. Circumstances may become overwhelming. But underneath all of it, there is still a quiet awareness capable of observing what is happening. Return to that awareness. When your mind says, I can't do this anymore, don't immediately argue with it. Pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what exactly feels impossible right now? Maybe it isn't your entire life. Maybe it is one situation. Maybe it is one relationship. Maybe it is financial pressure. Maybe it is exhaustion. Maybe it is the feeling that you have been trying so hard without seeing results. Name the real problem. Because when everything becomes one enormous problem called my life, it feels impossible to solve. But when you separate the pieces, you may discover that one piece can be addressed. Then another. And another. You don't have to carry the whole mountain in one hand. Take one stone at a time. And remember that asking for support is not failure. We are not designed to carry everything alone. Sometimes another person's presence gives you enough space to breathe again. Sometimes a trusted friend, family member, counselor, mentor, or professional can help you see what your exhausted mind cannot see. There is wisdom in reaching outward when you feel overwhelmed. You don't lose your strength by accepting support. You strengthen your ability to continue. And continuing does not always look dramatic. Sometimes continuing is very quiet. It is making breakfast, taking a shower, going for a walk, opening the curtains, returning a message, going to sleep instead of staying awake with your thoughts. It is choosing one small act of care. Never underestimate the power of small beginnings. A life does not transform only through enormous decisions. It transforms through small choices repeated with awareness. You don't need to feel hopeful before taking the next step. Sometimes the action comes first and hope follows. Take the step even if your heart is uncertain. Take the step even if you are tired. Take the step even if you cannot yet see where it leads. You don't need to see the entire staircase. You only need to see the next step. And as you move, something may begin to change. The mind becomes quieter. The heart becomes softer. A new possibility appears. You realize that what felt like the end was actually a transition. What felt like a failure was an invitation to learn. What felt like a closed door was perhaps a redirection. You don't have to force yourself to understand the meaning of everything today. Just remain open. Let life surprise you. Let yourself change. Let yourself grow beyond the version of you that believed this moment would last forever. And if today is all you can handle, then let today be enough. If all you can manage is one breath, take that breath. If you can take one step, take that step. If you need to rest, rest. But don't confuse resting with quitting. Sometimes you are not finished, you are simply tired. And there is a profound difference. So give yourself permission to pause without abandoning your future. Give yourself permission to heal without demanding a deadline. Give yourself permission to begin again as many times as necessary. There is still life ahead of you. There is still possibility ahead of you. And there is still a deeper version of yourself waiting to emerge from this experience. You don't have to know how the story ends. You only have to remain present long enough to discover the next page. Keep going, one breath and one step at a time. Your story is still unfolding.